Hello and welcome to Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. This week it's episode 264. I'm your co-host Russ.
I'm your co-host Mike.
I want to send out some thanks for last week's episode. First of all, to Joe Brent at Ajaropa Records for sharing our episode from last week, where we featured UK saxophonist Rob Cope's Phoenix Volume 1. Also, thanks to the Binyami Veltri Jazz Ensemble and Gleam Records for both sharing our episode on their Facebook pages. We featured their recording Non-Spaces, a recording that was a commentary on our contemporary living situation. And the music is kind of interesting in a lot of ways, really good arranging, and some thoughtful ideas to consider while you're listening to it. So if you missed last week's episode, be sure to go back and check out those recordings.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, their assessment of our contemporary living situation wasn't very positive.
No.
It's a little dark.
There's a lot of things that have changed for the worse. I think we all know about them, but
yeah.
Anyway, there's hope yet, especially in good music.
I miss the past, but you know.
Well, mostly we just need to connect with people more in real spaces, not these non-spaces around us.
Yeah, as the World Cup in the USA is showing us, everybody's having a good time.
Got to get together, get off from your computer, and go meet people in the real world.
Right.
All right, before we get into new things, I've got to get over to the piano here for musical coda this week. Trumpeter Jim Hines passed away on June 18th. I couldn't find his age listed anywhere. Hines was a graduate of Ithaca College and Eastman School of Music, and New York musicians will remember his name from his work in the 90s across a lot of different genres, performing and recording with big names like Paul Simon, Sting, James Taylor, Tony Bennett, and many more, and a lot of jazz work as well. He also worked on Broadway and recording movie soundtracks, and he had been living in Knoxville, Tennessee in recent years, playing in the Knoxville Jazz Orchestra and running a coffee shop with his wife there.
Nice.
And I remembered his name because I attended a jazz trumpet workshop with him way back in the early 90s.
Wow.
So rest in peace, Jim Hines. Also, not a jazz guy, but vocalist of the often jazzy Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Oh, yeah.
David
I
Clayton
heard
Thomas
this.
passed away on June 24th at the age of 84. And so we grew up with a lot of their great music in the soundtrack of our lives in the 70s.
Right, on the radio.
Yeah, and he had a really distinctive, really joyful, big husky voice, and always enjoyed listening to him. All right, let's roll into new music for this episode. We've got a lot of great recordings coming up. And in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of the recordings we're going to discuss. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. Now, if you can't see the full description, or if the recording list and links are hard to access wherever you're listening to us now, you can always come over and check us out on our host site. That's Podbean, PODBEAN.com. Everything's easy to follow there. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe wherever you like listening to us, and tell a music-loving friend. Help us to grow our audience. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that also helps us get listed in the music category recommendations, and that's another way we can grow our audience. You can come follow us on social media as well. We've got a Facebook page where we post the episodes and playlists and some new recordings sometimes. And we also over on X as well. We're Adult Music Pod there. And I post links to the new episodes over there. You can leave comments or messages to us through there. Or if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We're going to play music sample clips as part of our discussion, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings. all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. And we also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists. And we're going to start out in the Baroque again this week with some interesting instrumentation, Mike.
Yeah, this was really fun. I like this album. It's called Ballade Vénitienne. It's by a group called Ensemble Tumbleweeds. Now, they're from the Haute-Saône region of northeastern France, so I'm wondering if Tumbleweeds is the way they would pronounce that. I don't know. Anyway, the director is Claire-Ombeline Muhlmeyer, and she is the sackbut and recorder player as well.
Nice combination, yeah.
Well, she doesn't play them both at the same time, though, like Roland Kirk, but on separate tracks. I got to tell you, on this record, the sackbut was the standout instrument.
Absolutely.
It's really amazing. Yeah, she plays it really boldly with a real brassy sound. Valentin Sagné-Baquet is the violinist, Pernelle Marzorati, triple harp, and Gerely Nastasi on the theorbo and guitar. I have to say I had a real trouble distinguishing between those two. I think I could usually tell the theorbo, but I should mention this is on the Evidence Classiques label, or maybe it's Evidence Classics. I don't know. We can pronounce that in English, I guess. Released on June 12th. This is our first Evidence Classics release that we're talking about. All right. Now, the booklet explains the ensemble's name. I was wondering about that. And they say, since time immemorial, musicians have been conduits who transmit and reinterpret works, adding their own knowledge to them. Anchored in the present, music will never re-exist, but each interpretation will give it new life. You know, this is something that people don't really understand, that every time you hear a musical performance, you're not hearing the original work. You know what I mean? It's always something new, even though you're playing the same notes. There are going to be different tempos, different interpretations, different tone quality. There's a lot of stuff. This paradox of each interpretation giving this music new life resonates perfectly with the tumbleweed, a part of a plant that represents its maturity. It is death detaching itself and rolling inexorably with the wind. But it is also the resumption of life, sowing seeds as it passes. And, you know, only a French person could come up with this to say that. Thus, seeds are to the tumbleweed what performers are to music, a reminder of the incessant wheel of time which allows men who shape the future throughout their lives, that's men with a capital M, by the way. It isn't men/women either, who shape the future throughout their lives to be born and to die. Now, by men, I should mention, they mean men and women, all people. It's the old use of the word men. Like the tumbleweed roaming over the immensity of the desert, performers offer a vision of these works from the past, enriching them with their current knowledge drawn from the vastness of the musical repertoire. Okay. I like the name, though. I think this is Tumbleweed Ensemble's first recording, and they wanted to popularize the music on this album, which they see as both lighthearted and full of emotion. Now, these are all works by Italian composers from the early Baroque era, and they've been well recorded over the last 30 years or so with the resurgence of the period instrument movement. A lot of people did research into the early Baroque and came up with these. I really love hearing these. I can never get enough of them, really. I'm kind of happy that we're going to be talking about these. This ensemble, by the way, looks very young. They look like they're all in their 20s. And so they sound fantastic, though, I have to say. So they came out of the womb fully formed, or out of the school in this case, I guess. Anyway, the first track is Marco Uccellini, a composer who I really love, by the way. I have some records of his music and have liked everything I've heard by him. This is his Symphonie Boscareccia, or Boscaressi, I guess, in French. Opus 8, 1660 is the publication date. When we talk about the Baroque, we're generally talking about publication dates and not composition dates. We really don't know when these were composed. Sinfonia Decima Quinta is the name of this particular piece from Symphonie Boscaressi, and it says A Carissima, Sinfonia Decima Quarta e Foschina. So I guess this is three different pieces that are kind of moving one into another. The triple harp starts this attractive work out, or set of works, I guess. There are three fragments of these works, so maybe they're complete. The melody is basic, progressing mostly in even segments. Pizzicato violin accompanies next. Each member of the ensemble joins after a verse. And I want to hear this when it really gets going, so I'm going to move into the track a little bit and play it. at around 1 minute and 30 seconds in. All right, so great rhythmic vivacity, great ensemble, enthusiasm, everything you want to hear from a young ensemble right there. And you heard Claire-Ombeline Muhlmeyer on the recorder there. She'll be playing the sackbut very soon. By the end of the piece, it sounds pretty raucous, and we were getting there in that sample. And we move on to track 2, Dario Castello. 1602 to 1631 are his years. He died at age 29. But I guess left some music behind. Sonata Concertate in Stile Moderno, Libro Secondo. At least he published at least 2 collections of his music. This is from 1629, 2 years before he died. After the previous work, this one sounds more meditative and features a lead sackbut and violin. So we get to hear this powerful sound of the sackbut on this recording here. Yeah, great tone on that sackbut, too, by Claire-Ombeline Muhlmeyer. We're going to hear more of that on this album later. Now, this work moves as a set of variations, mostly in rhythmic form, so the melody stays the same, but the rhythm changes. Tempo changes from section to section, and the sound of the sackbut on this track is pleasantly resonant, and it gets pretty deep in its range. There's a lot of variety and contrast between each section of the piece, and it ends with an appealing flourish. Track 3, Alessandro Grandi, Ghirlanda Sacra, Libro Primo, 1625. The track is called O Quam Tu Pulchra Es. That's Latin for How Beautiful You Are. The opening octave between the theorbo and harp catches the ear. Octaves are really interesting on these kind of instruments. After which the sackbut plays the melody with a heavy, deep tone. Nice.
Yeah.
Great tone again. So after a minute, a 3/4 dancing rhythm begins on the theme, and contrasting sections follow, each of them pretty brief. It's funny how a 400-year-old work like this can suit the modern attention span in its understanding of when to change rhythm or tempo. This really would fit the smartphone age. Give it a listen. Track 4, Biagio Marini, another composer that I've come to really love from this era. Per ogni sorta di strumento musicale, opus 22 from 1655. This is his Passacaglia a 3 e a 4. So, Passacaglia, in other words. A set of variations over a repeating bass line. The piece begins with an upward flourish on the violin, with the sackbut coming in to contribute a weighty tone here. The contrast here is between light and heavy, the violin and the sackbut. That's throughout the album, really. Okay, I'm going to sample something light here from the violin. We'll hear more of the sackbut later, don't worry. Okay, let's give some credit to the violinist, Valentin Saigney-Baquet, there, for some really sensitive playing. Now, the sackbut is in with the violin at about the 1 minute and 45-second mark. The violin gets one more gentle statement at about 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Then the sackbut is in to end the piece with it. Track 5, Girolamo Frescobaldi, one of the big names of this era in Italian music. Canzoni da suonare a una, due, tre e quattro from 1634. This is Canzone terza a due canti, F8.14c. The sackbut here sounds like a Baroque brass instrument at the opening, playing an upbeat theme. I should have let that go a little bit for the ensemble there. But of course, the sackbut it's really a Renaissance era instrument, but being played in the early Baroque here. I really have to commend Claire-Ombeline Muhlmeyer's clear, steady tone on the sackbut with Valentin Saigney-Baquet, adding a dancing lightness to the violin. The violin gets a solo section at 1 minute and 50 seconds with light theorbo accompaniment from Geraldine Nastasi. There are some great melodic dissonances in the sackbut line, or at least they register most strongly there. Frescobaldi showing a bit of adventurousness for the period in his writing, which is probably why he's remembered as one of the greats of the early Baroque. Track 6, Johannes Hieronymus Kapsberger, Intavolatura di Chitarrone, Libro Primo from 1604. This is Toccata Seconda from that collection. This piece is relatively brief, and the quick arpeggiated guitar line is played by Geraldine Nastasi with a modern temperament. The triple harp, played by Pernell Marzorati, has the lead here. There are no winds or bowed strings. The piece has a rambling quality to it. Piece just keeps reaching upward. Track 7, Giovanni Legrenzi, Sonate a due e a tre, Libro Primo, Opera Seconda from 1655. This is La Spilimberga a due violini. I guess Spilimberga is somebody's name. The voices appealingly enter an imitation at different intervals. I find this record pretty irresistible, actually.
Yeah.
I'm liking every track. Here we go. Let's hear a bit of this. The piece is given a gentle, gliding flow by the ensemble, who are all playing on the track, with Claire-Ombeline Muhlmeyer's sackbut drawing most of the attention due to its bold tone. She's an equal voice with the others in this polyphonic work, though. There's some fantastic polyphonic interaction in the writing, beautifully executed by Muhlmeyer and Saigney-Baquet. Track 8, Biagio Marini, Sonate, Sinfonie e Canzoni Passamezzi, Balletti, Correnti, Gagliarde e Ritornelli, Opus 8. Yeah, that's a great title to sell your work with. But I guess it would be, because it names all of the different kinds of pieces that are in this collection. Opus 8 from 1626. This is the Sonata Quarta per il violino per sonar con due corde. I really love this piece too. I remember this from an old recording by La Romanesca, which featured Andrew Manzi on violin. This is 30 years later, so this is given a bit of a different sound here. The track starts with a sustained tone introduction played on the violin with triple harp and theorbo supporting. By 30 seconds, the music breaks into an answering rhythm, which sets its sighing opening momentarily free. Marzorati gets a solo on the triple harp at 1 minute and 30 seconds or so. The piece features sudden rhythmic changes with each section, and it keeps the listener on his toes. There's a gorgeous violin melody at 3 minutes and 45 seconds, supported by theorbo and triple harp, and let's hear that oasis-like moment in this work. This happens in a lot of Marini's pieces where you'll have variations and then one will just knock you out. I really liked this one. The piece gets a bit raucous at around the 5 minute and 15 second mark with a more rollicking rhythm. This is followed by rapid cascading violin lines in the next section, and then a theorbo solo at around the 6 minute mark. Another gorgeous melody emerges on the violin at around 6 minutes and 45 seconds. Ysaÿe Baquet gets a lot of star-making moments in this piece. The piece ends on a violin-led statement of this final melody. Track 9, Maurizio Cazzati, Trattenimenti per camera, opus 22, published in 1660 in Bologna. This is the piece called Passacaglia. It's just a Passacaglia. The theorbo starts this work solo with a meditative melody, and the triple harp is in to add more harmony and timbral resonance. The sackbut is in for a melody, lightening the tone a bit, but still sounding bold. This is a pleasantly paced work with appealing melodies. Okay, so we got that undulating rhythm there with the melody. There's a gorgeous, gentle ending to this too. This piece was a standout for me, so I recommend you hear it in full. That's track 9. Track 10, again, Maurizio Cazzati, Ciaccona a Tre from 1659. This one also starts on a chord riff on the guitar. The double-stopping violin and sackbut play the theme, and Geraldine Nastasi strums in accompaniment. The piece gets livelier as it goes, adding more ornamentation to the lines, giving them more energy. I'll let you sample this one for yourself. Track 11, Girolamo Frescobaldi, Toccate e Partita di Intavolatura Libro Secondo from 1627. This is Toccata Decima F3 decimal 10 from that collection. This starts with a triple harp flourish and continues in improvisational style until the 50-second mark, when a rhythm is given to the theme. The track features the theorbo and triple harp playing in duet. A pleasant dotted rhythm theme starts at 2 minutes, which caught my ear, and I guess I'll sample that. Okay, so again, different variations on that theme, which is a common practice in the early Baroque. Like most themes in this work, this moment doesn't stick around long. In fact, it disappeared quickly into the sample. Frescobaldi's sections are often very short. I know he has one piece that's called like 100 variations on something. It's a 5-minute piece, so they all go by really quickly. Now, the sheer multitude of themes show off his never-ending ideas. The harp and theorbo blend well, and it's often hard to tell them apart. This is an exceptionally good-sounding track with the two plucked instrument musicians interacting ideally. And let me name them again. That's Pernelle Maserati on triple harp and Geraldine Stasi on the theorbo. I'm guessing that's what that is there. Track 12, Marco Uccellini, Sinfonia Boscareccia Opus 8 from 1660. The work is called Sinfonia Decimaterza a Perdiera. A Perdiera is probably the dedicatee. The opening sounds like a guitar. Again, a harp comes in to take on a variation on the melody. The violin is in with pizzicati soon after, and here Claire-Ombeline Muhlmeyer plays the recorder, only the second time on the album we're hearing it. The rhythm becomes raucous on the recorder's entrance, and it seems like the ensemble saves the recorder for the more raucous works on this album. Let's hear a bit of this. That's the end of that work. We go on to Maurizio Cazzati, the last track on the album, Sonata a due violini a basso continuo opus 18 from 1659. From that collection, this is Sonata duodecima. The recorder is back, accompanied at first by the guitar, and then the violin comes in and plays along. Yeah, some pretty athletic recorder playing by Muhlmeyer, and I love the imitations, of course, between the violin and the recorder there. Muhlmeyer shows some athleticism on the recorder too on this track. There's seemingly an end to the music on a full cadence at 1 minute and 35 seconds, but after a pause, a slower introductory section comes in, followed at 2 minutes and 20 seconds by a faster section where Muhlmeyer plays impressively fast repeated notes on the recorder. This piece is an upbeat way to end the album. Well, Tumbleweed Ensemble's enthusiasm for this music is on full display in the strongly defined rhythms and the simple lightness of the playing. These works are all melodically appealing, and even when naughtier works with many sections like Frescobaldi's come in, the timbral combinations that the ensemble gives the work along with the infectious rhythms make it a joy to listen to, as well as easy to follow. Great sensitive melodic playing too. I also really enjoyed the fact that the continuo was all plucked strings with no harpsichord, making for a different sound. All 4 members of the ensemble are given moments to shine in the program. Tumbleweed Ensemble's debut album shows that the group has something infectious to bring to this music, and I'm looking forward to following their journey to see what they decide to do next.
We've heard a lot of early Baroque recordings, but what makes this one stand out is the unique instrumentation. Claire-Ombeline Muhlmeyer doubling on recorder and sax, but sounding great on both was really appealing. And not having a real bass instrument like an organ bass or a bass viol made the performances focus on the middle registers, although sometimes the theorbo does cover the lower register more with a real long vibrating note. In contrast, I enjoyed the sections of pieces that were rhythmic, plucky and strummy, while the triple harp and guitar were together, like in the opening Uccellini piece. The performances were enthusiastic and sometimes getting real dance-like momentum, as in the Marini work. In the more lyrical sections and slower pieces, the interplay between the violin and sackbut was what stood out and made this recording special to me. And as I said, it's a youthful and energetic ensemble. I'd really like to hear more material from them in the future.
It's really funny how we as older people like to hear the younger musicians play, because they bring a lot of enthusiasm.
Right.
Whereas, there's a lot of maturity to like an older musician's playing, and that's a different quality though. What
I don't really like in classical or jazz are performances that are too careful.
Yeah, I think that's how rock and roll upbringing, But yeah, that's generally the case.
I want to hear some expression, especially in older music. Right. Either way, have some fun with it, make it fresh and new, rather than worrying about having it flawless. And not that there was anything flaw in this recording, but the way they were playing was kind of with a bit of abandon and really getting into the spirit of the music, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I like hearing that too. There was once a time when classical music was always presented as something really dignified, at the expense of really any expression that was in the music. They were going for the big statement to reach, it was almost like this, they're trying to create this musical Tower of Babel to reach into heaven or something. But now we can hear all the humor in Beethoven now. He's not this serious furrowed brow composer that he's often made out to be. He actually had a sense of humor, and a lot of his music shows it, but some of it's very serious too. Okay, next we have 3 French composers, really 2 French and 1 Belgian, Jean Cras, Eugène Ysaÿe, and Jean Françaix. This is called Conversation à Trois, and it's by Trio Boccherini. This is a string trio featuring Soo-young Kang on violin, Vicky Powell on viola, and Paolo Bonomini on cello. This is on the BIS label, and it's an SACD if you're lucky enough to have one of those. I don't have it yet, but I really like this album, so I think I'm going to get it. This was released on June 19th. We rarely hear works for string trio. Back when practices were established in the classical era of Haydn and Mozart, Haydn showed in his Opus 33 string quartets how the 4 instruments can act as voices in an intricate, intimate conversation. Inspired by Haydn, Mozart showed the same could be achieved for 3 string instruments in his Divertimento for string trio K563. Write those down, everybody. That's 7 works. You have the Divertimento, which is, I think, a 7-movement work, and then the 6 Haydn string quartets that make up Opus 33. These works will make your day. They're so great. And not only that, they're conversational, and they're a conversation at a higher level. They're not like the kind of conversations we generally have today. Yet Mozart's achievement on the string trio had few imitators, at least in the German-speaking world. French-speaking composers, however, have made more of the medium. Well, why is that? Maybe it's because Boccherini's trios were published with the title Conversazioni a tre, so conversations for 3, and early French string trios often referred to them as Conversation à trois, which is what this album is called. Conversations for 3. In a culture where the art of conversation was carefully cultivated, it's easy to see how a musical seed might have been sown. So string trios.
Yeah.
And we're going to hear 3 of them here, and they're all really fantastic, and they're all from the early 20th century. The first composer is Jean Cras, who is a name who's new to me. I had never heard his music before, and then I heard a record for flute and harp where one of his works is on it, and now this one right after it. So now I'm hearing a lot of his music all of a sudden. His years were 1879 to 1932, and this is his trio for violin, viola, and cello from 1926. Now, Cras said, that's C-R-A-S, by the way, if you want to look that up. Cras said, I would like to give all 3 instruments their maximum in order to give the impression of plenitude. It is very interesting to build something with limited means. And I have to say, I really agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, rock bands are really good at this because you have these 4 people. They're kind of trying to put something together with only 4 instruments, and I always find that exciting. Now, Cras wrote the work when he was on board the cruiser La Motte Piquet, then moored at Lorient, Brittany. He had joined the French Navy at 17 as a midshipman, later rising to lieutenant, and finally to rear admiral. He therefore traveled widely and some forms of folk music that he encountered in his travels made their way into this work. And they're pretty obvious when you hear them. I may even sample one of them here. Let's see. Track 1 has the instruction minim equals 72. Like a minim is an eighth note, we would say in the US. Now, this piece starts with a chugging effect that really caught my attention right away. I like this right from the first notes. It sounds like a train, so it kind of sounds like we're on a journey here. There's a bit of bluesiness and a bit of a train whistle sound to the strings above the cello. Yeah, as Americans, I think we associate the blues with trains because people were traveling from place to place at the time too, and a lot of those train rhythms got into the music of the era. Let's hear this. This is pretty great. I really liked this opening. Now, it's going to go on from there, but I'm going to fade out and have you sample the rest. The pattern actually pauses for about 10 seconds and restarts at about the 40-second mark, but it makes a move into a brief melody. The melodic material morphs into new material and harmony quickly. This is really perfect for our short attention spans of today. We may have a theme here, between the Baroque and this album or this piece with music for short attention spans. We might want to think about that as a title for the episode. We're constantly grabbed by new material in this movement as though quick scenes are passing before us. There's a bit of a folk song vibe at 2 minutes and 20 seconds, but again, blink and you'll miss it. It does return at about the 2 minute and 35-second mark, a haunting modal type of theme. The movement settles into this theme, and it's played high on the violin with thread-like tone from around the 3 minute and 50-second mark. At 4 minutes and 14 seconds, a more rustic, sawn-out type of rhythm suddenly bursts in, but the folk-like sense remains. In fact, that's a huge contrast from the section before. There are some interesting harmonic turns at times, the melody suddenly dipping and sustaining on an odd note. Quick changes of rhythmic profile continue, but the melodic material by this point is familiar from earlier episodes. I get the sense of a train passing through different scenery, so you're looking out the window and seeing all these different things. At 7 minutes and 19 seconds, a more yearning and very attractive version of the material leads the movement to a satisfying ending. Track 2, the second movement, lent, which means slow. This movement features different modes and melismatic vocal styles of Middle Eastern and North African music, along with pungent solos with bagpipe-like drone accompaniments. The opening vibratoless chant lines suggest something primally religious. This starts with a light organ-like tone with no vibrato. It sounds very churchy at the opening. At 1 minute and 28 seconds, the church-like music ends, and we get a more rustic rhythm, hewn out of the cello and viola, as the violin plays a modal theme above, one that sounds like something from Eastern Europe. There's a Bartók equivalence to this section. After a pause, at the 3 minute mark, a single line on the violin evokes an Arab music sound. This is a work and movement about traveling to foreign lands. After this, the viola and then the violin play a melody in an Arab mode. Maybe I should say makam. These modal melodies take on a light, perfumed character toward the end of the movement, and this is so different from what we've heard on this piece up to now that I really have to sample it. Yeah, this is a melody that wafts into the air like perfume, and the music does a natural fade at the end. Track 3 is the third movement, animé. Again, a clacking rhythm as though we're on a train. I guess we're traveling once again. It sounds a lot like Dvorak's American idiom. It could very well be Eastern Europe again. Let's hear a bit of this. All right, let's come out of it there and move on. Just past the 1 minute mark, the tempo picks up, and about the 2 minute mark, rhythms and overall textures start changing rapidly again, but we always seem to wind up back on that clacking rhythm of the opening. I liked the cello's pizzicato over the pizzicato clacking rhythm in the last minute of the movement. For the last chords, bowed chords are briefly back. Track 4, the fourth movement, Très animé. What starts out like a Bach three-part invention transforms itself into something closer to a Celtic dance, Brittany finally making its mark on Cras's composition. Swirling line on the cello, and the other two instruments come in a fugal way, each voice entering on the same theme intervals away. They soon line up, and the line blows through a few keys before settling on a brief cello melody, later taken up by the violin. At 2 minutes and 2 seconds, the Celtic rhythm and themes start. This is played with admirable abandon by the trio Boccherini here, and some clever orchestration too, with the pizzicato line answering a calling line, a pleasure to the ear. The melodic shape remains, but tempo and rhythm change, keeping the movement interesting and immediate. Alright, the next work is a very long one-movement work by Eugène Ysaÿe. This is track 5, his string trio Ysaÿe, opus posthumous from 1927. That was when it was composed. Ysaÿe, of course, is best known for his solo violin works and as a virtuoso violinist of the Paganini type. He's one of the real giants of virtuosic violin playing. We even talked about his works for solo violin on an earlier episode. Right. Yeah, Ysaÿe is the Belgian town where this work was premiered in 1964, 33 years after Ysaÿe's death. Now, Ysaÿe himself is Belgian. The name Ysaÿe wasn't given by him because obviously he was dead by the time the work was premiered. By the way, Ysaÿe is also the town where there's this Benedictine, I think it is, monastery where beer is brewed, and you can get that in your local shop. I guess it's a pretty strong beer. We get it here in Japan. Anyway, Ysaÿe played the viola and cello as well as the violin, and his ability to feel his way into the character of the three instruments is clearly another big plus in this composition. The piece starts darkly with a frown in the harmony low down. Ghostly themes float above. The piece unravels slowly. There's a big tension build up at the minute mark and some shivering trills that sound kind of frail in the string trio format. It's an interesting sound though. A new theme starts up at around the 2 minute and 20 second mark. It's wispy with all three lines exposed, and this is a good place to sample. All right, as we move out of that sample, trouble is brewing in the harmony. Now, I have to say, This movement is really more about its trajectory than any actual moment, so the sample isn't going to do it justice. I'll do another sample later, but even so, you should hear this entire work. So we heard the harmonic crisis at the end of that sample, and the music squeaks out of this with frantic high-end melody and quickly bowed shivers, after which the music descends downward in floating fashion. So for the first 5 minutes, this movement has been trying to reach higher musical ground, but winds up not quite reaching it. It seems to secure an anchor there at around the 5 minute and 40-second mark, though. A solo violin plays at 6 minutes and 15 seconds, inviting the other two in with a more chastened melody. So I guess after the adventure, we wind up with a bit more modesty here. The accompaniment is more careful at the 8 minute mark with a slower rhythm, as though being more cautious in its seeking of more positive harmonies. There's a quickening of energy at the 8 minute and 40-second mark, and a harmonic crisis immediately ensues, but the playing in general remains near the harmonic area. The cello gets a solo statement at 9 minutes and 20 seconds, followed by rising lines reaching up once again, and building tension. Wilder lines and rhythm follow, with the violin playing a wide-ranging theme. The viola now gets a solo line at 12 minutes and 45 seconds, beckoning in a quieter rhythm and theme. At the 14 minute and 45-second mark, over a kind of rowing rhythm, the violin sings out with some passion. This decrescendos quickly, and the violin takes on a sweet tone over a tamer melody at 15 minutes and 15 seconds. I like the cheeky sounding theme at 17 minutes, accompanied by pizzicati. It's quiet, but let's see if we can make it register in a sample. You can hear some of Ysaÿe's virtuosic style in that sample too. All of this eventually leads to a quickening of the energy and a move toward a more hopeful place by the end of the piece. And the final work is Jean Françaix, who never really wrote a piece that made us furrow our brows. This is his string trio from 1933. This was written during troubled times in Europe, yet Françaix's trio shares none of Ysaÿe's sense of foreboding. The work is light, airborne, playful, even impertinent. Françaix is sort of like what P.G. Wodehouse was for literature in those days, an escape into a better world. There was a vogue at the time for neoclassicism in France, but Françaix wasn't iconoclastically naughty like the composers of Les Six, such as Poulenc and Milhaud. His music instead was tempered by a deep love for the charm, wit, and textural clarity of French Baroque and classical music. And again, to me, this is the musical equivalent of Jeeves from the P.G. Wodehouse books. And they're kind of charming, too, in a funny way. Track 6, the first movement, Allegretto Vivo. This movement provides an excellent example of a conversation for three. All three instruments are muted, and this starts with a quick stuttering line on the strings. It's impressive sounding, and a melody comes in over this. I'm going to start a little bit in at around the 30-second mark. And again, on occasion, we get brief train-like chugging rhythms in there as well. At 1 minute and 10 seconds, there are some great squeaks from the high end of the instruments that come across as really cute. The movement is fairly brief and just over 2 minutes, but it's very eventful. Track 7, the second movement, is a scherzo marked vivo. The mutes are off here, and parody comes to the fore in this intoxicated-sounding fast waltz. This has an energetic quality to it as well. Yeah, all kinds of great sounds in there. Yeah. It's a really fun movement. And it continues with much the same feel as the first movement. At 1 minute and 18 seconds, there's a switch to a B section with a strongly defined 3/4 waltz feel to it. The A section is then back. Track 8, the third movement, Andante, evokes tenderness. The Andante comes across as a complete change of pace with a gauzy sound out of the violin playing the melody. So kind of a sad and weepy sort of sound, but nothing tragic happening there. The music builds to an early 20th century popular song melody in the second minute, or that type of melody, and then comes back to the opening style for the ending. The melodic line fades without reaching a resolution. And then on track 9, the fourth movement, Rondo, marked Vivo. This music takes us to the Parisian music hall stage for pure fun and games. There's a moment toward the end where the ensemble seems momentarily to forget it's just 3 instruments, as the players strain for the effect of a full-string orchestra, the texture filled out with thick chordal scrubbing, a moment of earthy comedy that also artfully reminds us just how skillful and elegant Françaix's writing for trio has been everywhere else. Now, scurrying lines with active pizzicati in the strings provide the texture for this vivacious-sounding movement. And right at the end there, Françaix always pulling a really appealing melody out of his textures. The detours from the rondo theme all come up with interesting turns of phrase and harmony. You heard one of them right there at the end of that sample. At the 2 minute and 20 second mark, there's a slow, dance-like 1-2 rhythm in the bass that the violin plays a sort of tango melody over. Then the scurrying rondo theme suddenly reappears. A kind of sassy American folk theme appears at around the 3 minute and 30 second mark, sounding bold. The piece ends with a light tone and a final pizzicato. It's a playful ending to a playful and highly enjoyable piece. Now we have one more track, the encore. This is Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piano piece, here arranged by Nicolas Chardlot for the string trio. Now, Chardlot is a viola player himself, and he takes the opening Andante très expressif section and fuses it elegantly with a brief coda, creating a memorable encore. The famous melody is played with sweet tone by the violin, which gives it a different character than the piano version. The violin tone remains sweet and in the high end for its melodies. The famous theme after the introduction is played unassumingly in the mid-range, and I really like the accompaniment quality here. Let's hear the famous melody that comes after the introduction. And that's the album. I had never heard the three main works on this album before, and what a pleasant surprise all of them were. They all make a suitably contrasting program, with Cras and Françaix trios pleasantly bookending the weightier, more romantic-sounding Ysaÿe work. I loved the episodic quality and sheer variety of music in the Cras trio, while Françaix trio was all cheerfulness with an introspective movement to balance it. The Ysaÿe work demands more concentration, but his writing has an appealing melodic character, so it's no great hardship to listen to. It's hard to come up with an encore after such a light, fleet score as the Françaix, but the string trio arrangement of Debussy's famous piano piece Clair de Lune suits the program perfectly. Trio Boccherini brings superlative performances to all three works, keeping in a suitable character with each hairpin turn in the bookend works and bringing drama and tension to the Ysaÿe trio. This is a recording that can be easily overlooked, as can all string trio recordings, and it's an under-recorded repertoire, but I urge you to hear it. It's really appealing and some really good new music.
Yeah, it's a fine recording of excellent performances. Less is more for trios versus quartets here. I think the compositions highlight the subtleties that a trio can embrace compared to a quartet. There's still a lot happening in three voices to keep your ear moving from voice to voice. I found all three works enjoyable. The Ysaÿe has a bit of everything, stylistically and technique-wise. It's tonal, but has shifting key centers. It has a lot of lyrical and sustained lines for the cello. The Françaix was engaging too, with a pulsating drift movement, a lyrical third movement, and butterfly-like flitting lines in the fourth movement with mixed pizzicato in it. But the Cras was the standout work for me. This work exceeded my expectations. Modal harmonies, Middle Eastern influences, rhythmic excitement, and really making the most of the three voices. And I thought the Boccherini Trio performs just fabulously on this recording.
Well, if you want to hear more Jean Cras, I recommend the album Elegance by Juliette Hurel on the flute and Isabelle Moretti on the harp. That has his work Suite en Duo from around the same period. So I'll send you I'll actually share that on Deezer for you, Russ, and for all the listeners as well. So Great. You can hear that as well. I missed that on the podcast, but it looks like a really great album as well. It is a great album, but I just didn't talk about it. All right, our contemporary composer of the week is Andy Akiho. His work Beneath Lighted Coffers and Concerto for Steel Pans and Orchestra. And boy, what a discovery this was.
Interesting.
This is by the Oregon Symphony, conducted by David Danzmayr, and it's on Reference Recordings. It's an SACD, and if you've never heard of Reference Recordings SACD, I recommend buying one and putting it on your SACD player. It will knock you out. It will blow you away, like the guy in the Maxell ads in the 1980s, sitting in the chair with the speakers like blowing all of his clothes off or whatever it was. It's really spectacular sound, and I imagine this is the same, although I haven't heard this on a Super Audio CD. I heard this on streaming. After hearing this, I may have to pick that up. Anyway, Akiho, born in 1979 in Columbia, South Carolina, plays the steel pans, and that hence the Concerto for Steel Pans and Orchestra, and he plays them also in Beneath Lighted Coffers on this album too. He learned them by ear in Trinidad, where he studied with Len Bugsy Sharp and Ray Holman, and in New York City, where he moved to the Caribbean community in Brooklyn. He moved to Brooklyn in 2003 and studied with pan innovators Scipio Sargent, Eddie Quarles, Clive Bradley, and Freddie Harris III. He began writing music at age 28, and he's currently based in Portland, Oregon, and in New York City. Now, bizarrely, the booklet doesn't directly state that Akiho himself is playing the steel pans in these compositions. But I mean, who else could it be? Who else is going to play this? It's his composition. He plays the instrument. It must be him. The booklet notes also strongly suggest that it's him. Reference recordings. Come on, man. Get your references there. I'm sure I'll be asking forgiveness for that, though, because it may actually list him on the back of the jewel case, too, but I don't have access to that. I just have the booklet, so there's no track listing in the booklet either.
I was hoping for a photo of the actual pans that he's using, too, because researching them a little bit, there seem to be various developments and different pairings that they use. And so I would have liked to have seen this exact instrument combination that he's using here. Although there may be something on YouTube, I haven't searched for it.
Yeah, there also may be something, again, on the back of the jewel case in the insert, because we didn't get a chance to see that. Anyway, the first work, tracks 1 through 5, Beneath Lighted Coffers. And this is an idea that's actually close to my heart as well. It was commissioned by the National Symphony Orchestra and written for one of Andy Akiho's music idols, the Trinidadian steel pan virtuoso Liam Teague. Its 5 movements were inspired by the Pantheon in Rome. This is why I was really attracted to it. And the movements are named after its elements. Akiho came to know about the structure after being awarded the 2014 Luciano Berio Rome Prize in Composition by the American Academy. You know, you and I have to win some kind of Rome Prize and get over there for a year.
Absolutely.
It'd be really great to live in Rome. Akiho spent most of 2015 living in Rome, where he visited the Pantheon almost daily, as did I for the much briefer period I was in Rome. It's a really amazing building. Even from the outside, just sitting in a cafe, just looking at it, you can spend the whole day there just looking at the structure. Yeah, look at pictures of it on the internet if you don't know what I'm talking about, listeners. It's really spectacular. Track 1, the first movement, is called Portico. So these movements are all named after parts of the Pantheon. It's inspired by the Pantheon's portico, the entryway that one sees walking up a once narrow path to the building. The portico is inviting and unassuming, and the grandeur of the dome cannot be seen from afar, creating a somewhat unexpected experience in the rotunda. What captivates me most about the Greek-inspired entrance, this is Akiho speaking now in the booklet notes, what captivates me most about the Greek-inspired entrance are the enormous monolithic Corinthian granite columns that were shipped from Egypt. The recording starts with the steel pans, and what a pleasant sound they make. Now, if you're really mesmerized by that, you'll just have to hear the rest of the track and go to some streaming service, or even better, get the SACD, especially if you have an SACD player. Now, I'm assuming that the percussive sounds are the Oregon Symphony percussion section and not Akiho himself. He sounds pretty busy on those steel pans. And I've heard steel pan players live before, and judging from what I heard from them, Akiho is quite a virtuoso. He's playing really rapidly here. I've never heard anything like that. Akiho starts off with an ostinato pattern with percussion adding extra sounds. Akiho sounds like a virtuoso on the instrument, and he plays unbroken lines at high speed and with a light touch as well, so that you can hardly hear the attack on the pans. The steel pans carry the movement, constantly playing, the rest of the orchestra only adding texture. The orchestra remains discreet throughout. As is often the case with recordings on the reference label, this one is incredibly vivid, with an extreme contrast between soft and loud. Yeah, that's another hallmark of reference recordings releases. I bet it would sound great on SACD, and I imagine there's an Atmos version too, which I'm sure is mind-blowing, but I didn't check for that, so you'll have to search for that yourself. Akiho's playing has the quality of the light patter of rain. The movement ends without resolution, the pan line simply stopping. Track 2, the second movement, 28. The architecture mirrors the 140 trapezoidal coffers, or sunken panels, geometrically arranged in 5 concentric circles of 28 in the Pantheon's concrete dome. Now, I remember these, but I didn't count them. I didn't really know how many there were, or even that there were 5 circles. He really must have paid serious attention when he was in there. The Coffers create an optical illusion that draws the observer toward the dome's center, and they look different depending on the light of day streaming in through the oculus. Now, I didn't spend like hours a day in there either. I was really only ever in there for maybe 20 minutes maximum. Because the coffers are sunken voids within the concrete, they are also a critical part of the architectural structure of the large domed ceiling. They evoke history, time, lightness, and possibility. Musically, Akiho says, he's saying all of this actually, I derived the melodic material of this movement from a 28-note palindromic scale that spans the entire range of the orchestra, and the structure of the movement is built in 5 groups of 140 beats, often subdivided into 5 groups of 28. Now you, the listener, don't need to know that to enjoy this movement, just as you don't really need to know much about the geometry of the inside to really appreciate how amazing it is. There's an ominous quality to the opening, which features only the orchestra, with prominent wind and brass chords crescendoing in and then pulling back. It communicates a changing quality of light inside the Pantheon to my ear. Percussion plays a large role in this movement. We don't hear the steel pans until 1 minute and 40 seconds in, and here they have a much more percussive quality. In fact, this sounds more like Akiho is using found objects to play percussion on, so let's hear a little bit of this. There's some great percussive sounds combining in this movement. I like the powerful crashes after the 3 minute and 30 second mark. An ostinato pattern starts at around the 4 minute and 30 second mark and goes for a minute. Then another rather crooked rhythm comes in for a moment. The piece keeps changing patterns as in a minimalist work toward the end and gains some propulsive momentum. One last brief pattern ends the movement after a pause. Track 3, the third movement, is called Oculus. Akiho's comments here, the many different skies that appear through the oculus continually change the way the Pantheon is experienced. Okay, the oculus is the hole at the top of the roof in the building. The skies inspired this central movement, whose music comes from a more personal and intuitive place, mimicking the unpredictable clouds and light variances above and through the exposed sky in the oculus. The oculus also acts as an architectural keystone, although it is purely empty space that has held the entire unreinforced concrete dome together for nearly 2,000 years. Like the oculus, this middle movement is central to the structure of the entire composition. There's an abstract opening, and what sounds like it could be a guitar or a harp plays a slow, arpeggiated pattern. The steel pans create atmosphere with soft trilling sounds. It all adds up to a pleasant texture made up of layers of shimmering trills. The texture changes at around the 2 minute mark when sustained tones introduce a steel pan solo. The pans get a shimmering timbre as Akiho plays them. Patterns change with the steel pans playing something more like trilling patterns at the 5 minute and 30 second mark, and the arpeggiated harp comes back. The movement does a natural fade on a repeating pattern. There's a light resolving chord. Then at 6 minutes and 45 seconds, the steel pans are front and center for a solo section that ends with a natural fade on a repeating note. Track 4 is the fourth movement called Corelli. The brief fourth movement drew inspiration from the Pantheon's marbled floor patterns and the music of the Italian Baroque composer and violinist Arcangelo Corelli, who is buried in the Pantheon. I have always been a fan of Corelli's chamber music, says Akiho, and I pay homage to him by alluding to the grave movement from his Concerto Grosso No. 3. The original lays out a melodic line of 45 notes for the violin, which I associated with the 45 circles of the Pantheon's patterned marble floor. Again, he counted these. Pretty amazed by that. Imagining rain falling from the oculus above, shifting these notes and timbres around before disappearing in the drainage system beneath the floor. Yeah, this is pretty amazing. There's an opening in the center of the building. When it rains, the rain comes into the building, but it all the floor is sort of tilted towards a drain in the middle, and the rain all goes down there. It's pretty amazing.
Apparently there's some type of vortex that happens that keeps out light rain from the updraft or something too. So they knew what they were doing when they built that.
We need those Romans to come back and build for us. I don't know. Anyway, the opening orchestral part doesn't sound like Corelli. In fact, it sounds like 21st century orchestration. The steel pans are in at the 30-second mark with a theme, and I'm guessing this is the Corelli theme. Let's hear it. Yeah, very different from a Baroque work. There's the vague quality of a march by the minute and 30-second mark, and the steel pans fall into an ostinato pattern by a minute and 45 seconds, which slows and stops. The orchestra bursts out with a forte ending. Track 5, the final movement of the work, is called Permanence, and Akiho remarks, writers and historians often use adjectives like permanence and progeny to describe the Pantheon, because it is the best preserved and most influential building from ancient Rome. It has miraculously endured numerous years, storms, fires, wars, governments, barbarians, and popes. The Pantheon brings together the past and the future, and I am very grateful to have had the opportunity to experience the history of the building and its architectural greatness while writing this piece in the present day. The solo pans start this movement with a solo pattern. Just the evenness of his scalar patterns is really amazing. He's got this almost preternatural, sense of that. This is by far the longest movement in the work at just over 10 minutes. The strings come in after the pan solo with swirling figures, which the steel pans then imitate. The movement picks up some kinetic energy by around the 2 minute and 30-second mark with heavy percussion hits and a highly active steel pan line. The steel pan line gradually lightens and grows gentler. At 5 minutes and 11 seconds, there's a sudden change of material with pulsing rhythm from the orchestra, again reminding me of classical minimalism. A gradual crescendo brings the music up to a forte level, with the steel pans playing a rapid pattern that the orchestral percussion interrupts with strong accents. The steel pans quickly recover, and at 7 minutes and 30 seconds, there's another solo section for the pans. The orchestral sounds acquire a more aggressive patterns by the 9-minute mark, and come down often with percussive chords. The steel pans make one more solo statement before accenting percussion finally shut the piece down. Track 6 is the Concerto for Steel Pans and Orchestra. It's in one movement. It's an early work originally written for and performed by the composer and the Yale Philharmonia in 2011. Akiho uses low-range instruments like bass clarinet, contrabassoon, trombone, and tuba to provide a strong contrasting anchor to the rippling treble range of the pans, and also to grab the attention of the adult music hosts because we love these instruments. The piece starts with some energy, sounding in media res, or starting sort of in the middle. Akiho is playing on the edges of the pans too, for percussive effect. The orchestra settles into distant circling patterns while the soloist tries out some interesting percussion. A sort of heavy 1-2 march rhythm at 2 minutes sets a grid for the very rapid steel pans to play in. Akiho here plays circling patterns that repeat. A quiet repeating pattern on the steel pans reminds me of something similar in the previous piece, Beneath Lighted Coffers. The orchestra and percussion comments around them. Strings eventually provide texture with sustained tones. At just before the 6-minute mark, rapid stick-like percussion on steel breaks out. Rapid ostinato patterns fly by at about this point. This work relies heavily on repeating patterns, as in minimalism. The tempo slows by the 8-minute mark as a repeating pattern settles in up to the 8-minute and 30-second mark, and the steel pans get a solo section next. The intensity gradually builds up to the 10-minute mark, where it lets off and the steel pans continue their impressively detailed solo. Let's hear a little bit of the work from that point. Okay, there is an orchestra in there, but we're just hearing like more of a solo section here, a cadenza. Some great sounds after the 11-minute mark from the repeating pattern on the pans are heard. We finally hear a bass drum and a gong as we approach the 12-minute mark, and busy percussion lead to an intense ending that I'm sure is going to just come up great sounding on a SACD. So, interesting sounds abound on this album. I've never heard the steel pans used as a solo concerto instrument until now, and their ability to play complex rhythms and melodies makes them highly suitable for the genre. And the Akiho plays with great virtuosity and sound sensitivity, sometimes getting a full percussive effect, and sometimes seemingly eliminating the attack in softer sections altogether. It kind of reminds me of what they used to say about Debussy's piano playing, like he made the piano sound like it didn't have hammers, and I guess you get a little bit of that sense here in Akiho's quieter playing. The major work here is, of course, the multi-movement Beneath Lighted Coffers, which relies on minimalist patterns to spin itself out. The youthful concerto that ends the program has a lot more explosive excitement to it, but the art of Beneath Lighted Coffers makes it a must-listen. The organ symphony conducted by David Danzmayr get a fully American groove to their rhythm, assisting Akiho in making these works flow satisfyingly. The sound quality of the album, as with most reference recordings releases, in fact, every one I've ever heard, but I haven't heard them all, is clear and impacts strongly, so percussive moments really blow the listener back, a feeling I enjoy. This music relies on repeating minimalist-like patterns very often, and it's a pleasure to listen to with this timbre. This is a modern composer who's carved out a specific niche for himself, and this is intoxicating music that awaits your discovery.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. The steel pans have a unique sound that's instantly identifiable and not something that I usually associate with classical music.
Right.
The shimmering sound is appealing, and the short sustain of the instrument requires writing rhythmically to express larger ideas. Akiho does that with scales and interesting figures, making a kind of sheets of sound effect with his ideas. And that works well with his orchestration of percussion particularly, which gives a lot of dramatic flair to the works here, and dynamic contrast. Having visited the Pantheon a couple times before and remembering the incredible features of the structure gave me an appreciation for what he's aiming to represent in Beneath Lighted Coffers. The music comes through to me as accessible and fun, but with surprises around each corner. So in the end, it's a really unique sounding album for a lot of reasons. As I mentioned, I wish there were some more details about the particular instruments. So I think I'm going to look, because I imagine watching a performance of this would also be very visually entertaining while you're listening.
Yeah, I'll have to check this out on YouTube and see if there's anything. We'll put it up on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
If I find it.
It's interesting because normally I hear these instruments in the sort of type of music from their original culture.
Yeah, the Caribbean, basically, yeah.
So I'm always thinking of like Caribbean kind of backings with it. But this orchestral setting was interesting. And yeah, I'm interested to see what else he comes up with in the future. Over on the jazz side, we're going to start out with some saxophone. Tomás Martinez on SteepleChase, In Good Company. This recording came out June 19th. Tomás Martinez, saxophonist from Buenos Aires, Argentina, has made a name for himself as a leading player in the younger generation of South American jazz musicians. He's studied with Charles McPherson, Bob Mover, George Coleman, Grant Stewart, and Chris Byers, and received formal training at both the Conservatorio Superior de Música Manuel de Falla and the Tribeca Jazz Institute in New York. His homepage bio doesn't list his age, but on the Presto Music album description it says that he's 26 years old. This is his debut as a leader, produced by Chris Byers, who described him as the finest alto saxophonist of his generation. Those are big words. And the description tells us this recording honors mentors like Charlie Parker, Barry Harris, and Charles McPherson. You'll hear that in the music, and it's interesting to hear a young musician going back to the bebop bass for his debut. And there's a mix of standards and original compositions here. The recording sort of alternates between two sessions. One is a New York quartet. That is Tomás Martinez on alto sax, Michael Weiss on piano, David Wong on bass, and Kenny Washington on drums. And the other is a trio recording done in Buenos Aires. And so we've got a cordless sax trio format with Martinez on alto sax again, and Paul Sikivi on the bass, and Teo Perez on drums. This was recorded in June and July of 2025. And the New York Quartet recordings were made at Van Gelder Studios. The recording is going to start out with a Billy Strayhorn composition, Something to Live For. Sometimes it starts with I Want Something to Live For, recorded by Duke Ellington and his orchestra in 1939. It's a great tune, and stylistically and sonically, it sounds like we're traveling back in time here. There's a 4-measure intro section that comes from the end of the 40-measure sax melody. Martinez has an appealing tone and fluid phrasing. I like the little Latin switch-ups on the way. Let's hear this recording get started. Let's come back in to check out some of Martinez's melodic bebop improvisations. Weiss follows with the piano solo. Martinez trades fours with Washington for a round before a final time through the melody. Track 2, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, a Harold Arlen composition. This one goes back even further, first recorded by Cab Calloway and his orchestra in 1931. Switching to the chordless trio here, Martinez gets this started with some rubato solo sax before Sykivy and Perez are in for a round of the 32-measure AABA melody. Let's hear it. After the melody, he carries on with improvisations, plenty of ideas. Sykivy has a bass solo, and then they do some trading with Perez, so let's check out some of that interaction. And they get back to the melody from the B section there to finish things up. Track 3 is a tune by pianist Barry Harris, Father Flanagan. This is from his 1978 album Barry Harris Plays Barry Harris on Xanadu Records. Weiss plays a 4-measure intro for this tune with a minor melody that has some nice harmonic twists. It's in an AABA 32-measure construction. And let's hear Martinez on a ballad here. Weiss takes the B section of the melody, and Martinez is back with the A. Weiss solos first with a delicate touch and splits the round with Wong's bass. Martinez follows, returning to the melody on the final A section with a soft ending. Since we've got 12 tracks to get through on this one, I'll leave you to check out the solos here. Track 4 is a Martinez original, Eloy's Delight. Trio format again here, and Perez gets it going with 8 measures of drums. Martinez's melody is 32 measures with halves that start off the same. Ysaÿe has just little phrases underneath until things are off swinging on Martinez's improvised solo. Ysaÿe walks out the bass for a solo, and Perez has a drum solo that gets some backing. Let's check out some of that. And they take it around the melody once more with a little coda ending. Track 5. It's The Talk of the Town, a song by Jerry Livingston from 1933, first recorded by Glenn Gray and his Casa Loma Orchestra. We're back to the quartet format here. David Wong starts this out on the bass, getting joined by Martinez on the melody. Drums and piano join in from the B section. Martinez's tone sounds great on this one. Continues on with a solo connecting back to the melody. Let's hear his cadenza ending on this one. And we go from It's the Talk of the Town to track 6, Cole Porter's Get Out of Town. This was recorded by Les Brown and his orchestra in 1938. Trio format again for this one, and Ysaÿe gets it pumping with bass from the start before Martinez and Perez join in on Porter's classic 32-measure melody. Martinez continues on for a solo. Ysaÿe has a melodic solo too. I'll leave you to check this one out on your own for the sake of time. Track 7 is a Martinez original, So Do I. The drums kick it in. Martinez's 32-measure AABA melody has cute falling and rising phrases over familiar-sounding chord changes. Let's check this one out. Into a solo from Martinez. Let's check out some of Michael Weiss's piano solo on this one. There are some new phrases trading with Washington's drums before the final melody section. Track 8 is a Charlie Parker tune, Quasimodo, recorded in 1947 and released in 1949. It's a contrafact of George Gershwin's Embraceable You. Back to the trio for this one, featuring Ysaÿe on a bass solo first, and then Martinez, and then Perez. I'll leave you to check this one out on your own as well. Track 9 is Land of Dreams, a tune by Eddie Haywood, first recorded by Hugo Winterfalter and his orchestra in 1954. Eddie Lockjaw Davis recorded it a couple times, once with Johnny Griffin. It's on Ahmad Jamal's Ballads album. This is an exciting up-tempo take with great drumming from Washington, who gets it going with an 8-measure drum intro. The melody is in an AABA shape with 16-measure sections. Let's hear it get going into the solo break for Martinez. And let's hear some more of Martinez's blistering bebop playing on this one. Weiss follows with a fleet-fingered piano solo, and Washington has an exciting drum solo before Martinez is back from the B section to finish up the melody. Track 10, Born to be Blue, a tune by Mel Torme from 1946. Torme recorded it with Sonny Burke and his orchestra in that year. The trio here, and Ysaÿe gets this started with some solo bass before Martinez is in on the melody with brushed backing from Perez. Martinez and Ysaÿe both have solos on this one. I'll leave you to check this one out on your own. Track 11 is a Martinez original, Byers Bop, must be for Chris Byers. And we've heard Chris a couple times on adult music, most recently with his album The Dark Forest. That has some great arranging of the winds on there. This one is a 12-bar bebop blues with some fun chord changes. After a couple rounds of the melody, Wong is up for a bass solo. Let's check this out. Martinez follows, and then Weiss. Let's also hear Washington's drum solo on this one. And a couple more rounds of the melody finishes it up. And the recording finishes up with track 12, another Martinez original, Never the Same, for C-Mac. That would be Charles McPherson. We stay with the quartet for the last tune. Washington gets it going. This one is a rhythm changes based tune, and Martinez continues on for a solo after the melody. Weiss has the next solo, and then they trade with Washington. Let's hear the exchanges on this one. And back to the melody from there to finish up the tune and the recording. On his debut as a leader, Tomás Martinez is in good company with Michael Weiss on piano, David Wong on bass, and Kenny Washington on drums in a New York quartet setting and in a trio recorded in Buenos Aires with Paul Sikivi on bass and Teo Perez on drums. The language is bebop, and Martinez has mastered the idiom at a young age. Of course, you can hear the influence of Charlie Parker and Charles McPherson in his playing, but Martinez has an inventive sense in the idiom, connecting up melodic ideas in constant streams through the recording. There aren't any surprises, really, other than his mature style for his age. Unknowingly, you might think this was a recording from the 1950s stylistically, and there's something to the recorded sound that helps to give it a kind of natural, timeless quality. I wonder what microphones they're using here. Great playing by all the members together and in solos, and with the start rooted deeply in bebop, I wonder where Martinez will go from here.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought of when I heard this album, just from the opening notes, that the album has an old school vibe. The 1950s, I imagined hearing it out of an old car radio back in those days. You know, it has that sound. It's the overall sound of the album. Also in Tomás Martinez's playing and tone, and even in Kenny Washington's drumming on the tracks that he plays on, that old school vibe from the 50s comes out. Washington hits hard, and the rattle from the drums captures something of the past, and that's on the tracks that he plays on. He's not on every track, I'm aware of that. The album is lively for the most part, starting with a hot, catchy first track and Something to Live For, and by the liveliness of the playing, I'd guess they found that something. It also veers into some covers, even a straight blues, before picking up again for the end. There are varying musicians on each track, all of them good company. Indeed, Michael Weiss plays piano throughout the album, and he made a great impression with his overall class and bluesy feel on the slower tracks. So much so that I went back to the one album that I actually own of his, the one we talked about last year called Homage.
Yeah, great recording.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to hear some of his playing.
Yeah, I was here too. I may have to pick this one up too, as I really did like this vibe. Yeah. Martinez himself varies his tone from bright to breathy, and his lines from romantic to virtuosic, keeping the album exciting throughout. And you, yourself, listeners, can find no better company than the playing on this album. How's that for a final line there?
It's a good one.
For a tagline. All right.
When I hear recordings like this, I feel assured that the older styles will never die away, because there's always a generation who will come up and, start right from there. So
yeah, and it's so infectious. We can't let this go. I mean, we need these good vibes,
Absolutely.
Especially now. People who don't know what they're missing out on. Everybody's unhappy. You can instantly change that by putting this record on.
Absolutely. All right, from here on out, it's going to be trumpet time, starting out with the Kenny Rittenhouse Quintet with Anthem for the Elders. This is a self-release that came out June 12th. Trumpeter, composer, and arranger Kenny Rittenhouse is a native of Fairmont, West Virginia. He went to Washington, D.C. in 1990 as a member of the U.S. Army Blues and spent 30 years as a full-time staff member in the Military Jazz Ensemble. He has a bachelor's degree from West Virginia Wesleyan College, a Master of Music and Jazz Studies from the University of Maryland, and also took graduate studies in trumpet and jazz at the Eastman School of Music and at Duquesne University. He served as the adjunct jazz trumpet professor for 13 years at George Mason University and is now adjunct trumpet professor at Morgan State University and a current member of the Smithsonian Jazz Masterworks Orchestra. The quintet is Kenny Rittenhouse on trumpet with all original compositions, Tim Green on alto sax, Alan Johnson on piano, Chris Funn on bass, and Carol C.V. Daschel III on drums. This was recorded on March 5th of this year, recorded, mixed, and mastered by Jeff Gruber. The recording gets going with a tune called Good Evening, Mr. Brown. This tune is for DC club owner Omral Brown, who hosted Rittenhouse's group's first CD release party at Bohemian Caverns. And we're off to a swinging start with a 16-measure intro from the rhythm section and some piano from Johnson. The horn melody is 32 measures with mixed unison and harmonized lines and rhythmic change-ups, and Rittenhouse continues on with a solo. Let's hear this recording get going. And we can't stop there. Let's keep on listening to more of Rittenhouse's solo. Yeah, nice melodic ideas and some fun interval jumping on that solo. Green follows with an alto sax solo, and then Johnson on piano with some two-hand rising lines and percussive chords. Fun has a bouncing bass solo, and Dashiell gets some drum time set off with the opening riff from the melody before they go around it one final time. A good high-energy start to the recording. Track 2, Shaft versus Superfly. The notes say this one is inspired by the film characters and imagines them not as rivals but as different faces of the same black heroic struggle. The three grooves portray them separately and then together. I'm not sure how they write the time signature for this one, but it has a 10-beat pattern that you can pick up on if you listen to the bass. It's an interesting groove. The horn melody is fun and jumpy, and after a modulation, Rittenhouse and Green are up for some trading. Let's hear this one get going. Where the horn exchanges are the highlight here, let's hear some more into the change-up to the second groove that keeps the 10-beat feel. There's that second groove starting up with some new horn lines, and after those lines, they vamp out on the groove for some drumming from Dashiell, and the final section is more chilled out with a 4/4 feel and happy horn lines and piano improvisations from Johnson. Track 3 is Geechee Land, and now the Geechee are an African indigenous mixed ethnic group rooted in the coastal areas of the U.S. states of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and this tune honors their African-rooted traditions and fight to keep their homes and culture alive. Dashiell gets this started on the drums, and the first section is a flowing rubato horn melody over bowed bass. Let's hear as much of it as we can in a minute. Now, after that section, Dashiell gets it going again with a new 6/8 groove for a kind of 60s post-bop minor modal section. The horn melody here is neat and has some brighter harmonic twists on the way, so let's hear some of that too. Green is up first for a solo here, working some rising ideas from the lower register of the horn. Rittenhouse follows with a solo that has lines that weave outside and in. You can hear a good amount of Freddie Hubbard influence in his ideas. Johnson has piano ripples into a more rollicking solo with percussive rising chords, and Dashiell keeping the drum energy strong underneath. The horns are back for lines, but the rhythm section keeps the momentum of that groove going some more before a final phrase with the horns. Track 4, Anthem for the Elders, the notes say it's a salute to jazz elders lost in recent years: Ellis Marsalis, Wayne Shorter, Wallace Roney, Chick Corea, and Pharoah Sanders, and also local musicians Howard Kingfish Franklin, Dolores King, and Carl Grubbs. It's the title track. This is in a gospel-y 6/8 at an unhurried tempo, and Johnson gets an 8-measure solo piano opening. The horn melody is appealing and goes on for some time with little twists in the harmony on the way. Let's hear it get going. Johnson gets a piano solo first with bluesy ideas and some classy high register figures. Rittenhouse is next with a solo that builds up nicely, and Fun has a bluesy bass solo that gets some soft horn backing lines. Let's hear some of his playing on this one. was really digging in there, so I had to let it play on. And the horns are back with melody lines, and then some interplay, started off by Green to the end. Track 5 is Tamir, and the notes say this one is in remembrance of Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old African-American boy killed by police while playing in a Cleveland park. It's a muted ballad, very slow. There's a 4-measure intro giving a delicate touch with repeated bass notes answering the piano chords. Rittenhouse starts it out with Green joining in with harmonization on the repeat of the first section. Let's hear it get started. There's a final contrasting section, and Rittenhouse has a muted solo on this one. Let's check out some of that as well. Gentle playing, getting that mute resonance really working for him. Johnson has a dreamy piano solo while Fun keeps the pulse going with tight bass lines underneath, and he gets a bass solo that really sings out. Another horn melody section leads to a sax solo from Green, and the groove picks up with a click, and then more weight from Dashiell's drums to the end with some repeated horn riffs. Track 6 is Asata. This one, the notes say, is Rittenhouse's tribute to the black women who fight for justice and equality. It's a minor blues with some tricky, hard-bopping horn lines. Check out the intro of syncopated piano chords. It sounds like 3 measures of 4 and then a 2-beat measure as the intro goes along. The blues melody has a different ending on the repeat for a big climax into Rittenhouse's solo. Let's check it out. Well, it's time to hear a solo from Green, so let's check out his playing on this one. swinging very hard with some tricky figures there. Johnson follows on piano. Fun has an exciting bass solo, and they do some vamping for Dasha to work up the drums before a final time through the melody with an extended ending. Track 7 is Baltimore, and the notes say this is a tribute to Rittenhouse's mentor and friend, trumpeter Tom Williams. It's a happy-sounding tune with a straight beat. Johnson switches to electric piano for this one. The melody has a repeating first section of 10 measures. Rittenhouse gets joined by Green on the repeat of that section. Let's hear it. The final melody section is 7 measures, and then Fun is up for a melodic bass solo. Rittenhouse has a thoughtful solo, and Johnson has an electric piano solo that brings out the charm in the tone. The horns are back from the final melody section into the starting section, but Green launches off from that with a sax solo to a final phrase with Rittenhouse. I'll leave you to sample the solos on this one for yourself. Track 8 is Tamir's Joy, and other than the title, it also seems to be related musically to track 5, as you'll recognize the chords and opening idea. But it's a more upbeat tune with a different horn melody. Let's hear it get started with the first 16-measure horn segment. Johnson has a piano interlude section there, and the horns are back with another 12-measure section, and then they trade improvised phrases. Now, I haven't given Johnson enough sampling time for all the dazzling piano playing he's done so far in the recording, so let's check out his solo on this one. And the first horn line is back from there, and then they build up some tension with vamping to some final horn lines that take it to a soft ending. And the recording finishes up with track 9, Back in the Day. The notes say this is a song about reminiscing on the old neighborhood and friends. The cymbals bring this into a really driving 6/8 groove driven hard by Funn's bass. After an 8-measure intro, there's a cheerful 16-measure horn melody that hangs over a bit, and Rittenhouse is up for a solo. Green follows, and then Rittenhouse returns for some exchanges, so let's check out some of the interplay. Yeah, nice building energy and playing off from each other's ideas. Johnson has a solo too, and then the horns are back with the melody, and Johnson gets to play on some more, getting horn backing and a faded ending. It's a joyful tune to end up the recording. Anthem for the Elders fits right in the comfortable post-bop pocket, but it sticks out with all original compositions from Kenny Rittenhouse. There's a lot of variety in the musical program, with hard swinging numbers, modal moods, and 6/8 grooves, tricky rhythms and meters in Shaft versus Superfly, plus ballads and blues. As a composer, Rittenhouse includes enough twists and new surprises as the tunes develop to keep your interest and make everything sound fresh. Rittenhouse's improvisation style is exciting, with some Freddie Hubbard influence, but he has an original melodic sense and well-connected ideas. Tim Green's alto sax solos are intense and explorative, keeping the energy high, and the rhythm section is great, striking up great grooves everywhere, and with lots of fabulous piano work from Alan Johnson, a really distinctive bass improvisation style from Chris Funn, and hard-hitting drums, and also a subtle side from Carol C.V. Dashiell III. If you like mainstream, hard-swinging post-bop jazz, this is guaranteed to satisfy.
Yeah, this album started in high spirits with great spirited playing and a smooth transition into the solo from the theme by Kenny Rittenhouse. It gradually gets mellower, but with fantastic playing all around and great tone on all of the instruments. The overall feel is sunny no matter what the tempo, so this would be a great summer listen, or even rainy day listen if you want some internal sunshine, if you know what I mean. Rittenhouse's tone on the trumpet is bold and well-rounded, and he keeps it in the most virtuosic passages. That tone, that is. Tim Green on alto sax is a fine partner, soloing with the same energy and even trading eights with him at times. My ear was frequently drawn toward the equally classy and virtuosic playing of Alan Johnson, the pianist. Johnson has a lot of appealing ideas that fit in perfectly with the compositions. Great thumping bass playing from Chris Funn, too, who also shows some creativity, and I'm always a fan of the bassist who uses harmonics, as Funn does on Tamir. Carol Dashiell III is hard-hitting and keeps the energy going, and I really liked this album. It had great energy, and I need this.
You gonna get this CD?
I have to get this one, too. This is crazy. This is only available at Bandcamp, though, apparently, so I'm going to have to pay a shipping charge if I get it.
Yeah, this would be a good one to have in the collection.
This one, and really all three of the jazz albums tonight. This next one is pretty electrifying too, as we would expected, really.
Yeah, we've heard a few really good albums from DC, especially, well, going back to our friend Tony Addison on drums.
Oh, yeah.
It was a good interview.
It was a good interview. He's got to come to Japan.
Yeah. All right, one more trumpet one here with a familiar name. Fabrizio Bosso and his quartet with Roots. This is on Warner Music Italy, came out June 12th as well. One of our favorite musicians, Fabrizio Bosso, started playing the trumpet at age 5 and at 15 graduated from the Conservatorio Giuseppe Verdi of Turin. He's had a long career at the top of the Italian jazz scene and played with big names like Dee Bridgewater, Diane Reeves, Stefano Di Battista, Enrico Rava, and Maria Schneider. Bosso has recorded more than 30 albums, and he shows up as a guest on a lot of recordings these days. I think this is probably around the 6th time we've heard him on adult music, and this time it's with his long-running quartet.
Yeah, we haven't heard too much from his quartet in a straight jazz kind of format. This is really exciting, too.
Yeah. So here, Fabrizio Bosso on trumpet and flugelhorn, Julian Oliver Mazzoriello on piano, Jacopo Forazza on the bass, and Nicola Angelucci on drums. This was recorded in March of this year, 2026, at the Cicaretto Recording Studio in Italy, recording and mixing by Francesco Ponticelli. And the recording gets started with a Bosso original, Elevation. This is a reverby solo trumpet track, and Bosso reaches some high elevations indeed, using the reverb to make the notes resonate and create some harmony. Let's hear a sample of this one. Yeah, pretty unique sounding. It's over in less than 2 minutes. Maybe you want to play something like that if you're used to playing in a large cathedral and getting all those reverberations.
Yeah, this track actually reminded me of, if anybody knows Madre Deus' album, Existir, there's a vocal track at the opening that's a lot like this and uses effects on it as well. So it put me in mind of that.
Interesting. Track 2 is a Forazza original composition, Traveling People. This starts with a 16-measure trumpet melody section. Then there's a bass and piano left-hand interlude before Bosso is back with some soaring lines into the next swinging section. Let's hear it get started. Mazzoriello is up first for a piano solo that's playful and hard swinging. Let's come back in to hear some of Bosso's solo on this one. he plays on, connecting back to the melody line, but the groove switches up for a little bass expedition from Forza and then dissipates to a pause before a restart and a return of the opening melody. Track 3 is an Angelucci original composition, Blind Spots. This is super tricky with a lot of syncopation and too many groove, meter, and tempo switch-ups to explain. Let's just hear it into some furious improvisations from Bosso. After spiraling into some free improvisations and losing its drive, new loping and then racing sections flare up, keeping you guessing what's coming next. Mazzariello has some fun with an adventurous piano solo, and Angelucci gets to mix things up on the drums before Bosso is back with the dangerous melody. I'll leave you to check out all the solos on this one on your own. Track 4 is a Mazzariello original composition, Melody for F. This starts quietly with soft rhythmic piano figures. Bass and drums join in for a long introduction. Let's take a sample from where the 36-measure trumpet melody section starts. It's a very pretty theme. The reverb is back for Bosso's solo on this one, making his lines echo. Let's hear some of Mazzariello's improvisations on his own composition here. It's a long solo, so I'll pick it up in progress to catch some neat waves and tremolos. And Bosso's back from there with flowing lines into the melody. Track 5 is a Bosso original, Passeggiando, which I think means strolling.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Well, it does have a carefree, strolling mood to it in 6/8 time. Bosso is muted here. The melody develops over 4 8-measure sections. in the beginning, and then at the end, Ferrazza doubles up the lines with Bosso on the bass, and there's a little piano section in the middle. It's quite charming. Ferrazza's up first for bass solo on this one, so let's keep listening to hear some of his playing with clear articulation and a nice melodic sense. Bosso's next with a playful solo over just Ferrazza's bass for the first part. Mazzariello has a piano solo on this one too, and after once more through the melody, Bosso gets some final improvisations to a slowed ending. Track 6 is a Bosso original, Angular Flights. This has a rubato opening over bowed bass, then a 4-measure line started by the piano brings in the main melody section that has 16 measures of jumpy lines, and then a switch up to 6/8 for 4 measures. Let's check this out. There's that opening 4-measure idea there again to get Mazzariello going on a solo. Let's hear some of Bosso's solo on this one. He continues on, and the tune finishes up with that 4-measure phrase that we heard earlier. Track 7 is the only composition not by one of the quartet members. This is Love Dance by Brazilian singer-composer Ivan Lins, which he recorded in 1981. The original Portuguese title is Lembrança. Now, this has been recorded a lot by jazz musicians. I think Lembrança means more like souvenir or memory, but the English title always seems to be Love Dance for some reason. Yeah. Now, as I was listening to this recording, I was wondering when Bosso was going to get out the plunger mute, because he almost always includes it on all of his recordings. But it's usually to a humorous effect in more of a raunchy, bluesy kind of tune. Not the case this time, because he uses it to a very pretty effect with vibrato on Lins's wonderful melody. Let's hear this. Now, he leaves things open for the contrasting middle section and then brings back the mute for the return of the A section of the melody. And the plunger work on his solo is really out of sight, so let's check that out as well. Françaix has a short bass solo that has a pleading quality to it before Bosso returns with the melody, and Mazzoreiro gets a piano solo to a quietening and slowed ending. Track 8 is Senza Tempo, so without a tempo could mean timeless too, I guess, right? That's a good title for this one that just flows along like pouring liquid at the beginning anyway. Let's hear that section. And from there, it picks up a slow 5-beat groove. Let's hear some of the high register bowed bass solo from Forazza a little bit later on. That sounds more like cello to me, and the plucked bass is going on underneath, so I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe they just overdubbed the solo section.
I actually think there's quite a bit of overdubbing on this album.
Yeah, there's some electronics and things. It's all subtle, but yeah, it adds to the atmosphere. Anyway, Bosso returns from there, and it has a quiet ending of piano. And by the way, this tune is credited to all the members of the quartet. Track 9 is Forazza composition, Better Days Ahead. It's a waltz ballad. After an 8-measure rhythm section intro, Bosso takes the melody. Sounds like flugelhorn here. It has a repeating 16-measure opening section, then a final 16 measures split between piano and flugelhorn. Let's hear it get started. After the melody, Bosso continues on for a lyrical and soaring solo. Let's check out that as well. Registered jump there. Mazuriello has a gentle piano solo too, before Bosso returns and takes it into a rubato section of the melody and has some gentle but playful improvisations before the end. And the recording ends up with another track credited to all the members called 1 Minute Song. This probably emerged from some spontaneous playing, and it has some fast and fun interaction. Speedy, muted, improvised lines from Bosso work to a cool riff that Mazuriello doubles up on over the locked-in ending groove. Well, it's actually less than a minute, so we may as well just hear it to finish things up. Roots from the Fabrizio Bosso Quartet explores some different avenues from ballads, hard-swinging post-bop and modal ideas to some freer ideas that always congeal back into tight ensemble playing. There are challenging groove and meter change-ups along the way, but as always, Bosso handles everything with playful grace, sounding as good as ever and often reaching up into the high register with ease. There's great chemistry and interaction between everyone in the quartet, with all members contributing to the compositions as well. Julian Oliver Mazzariello's piano solos are expressive, from gentle lines to rollicking hard-swinging ideas. Jacopo Ferrazza's bass playing drives the grooves with fine solos and some bowing too, and Nicola Angelucci's drums are just right in the mix with tight fills and crisp cymbals. It's a recording that has some challenging music, but manages to always sound fun.
Yeah, Bosso is a really amazing player. He's got a lot of different kind of approaches, and he manages to get them all onto all of the albums he does. And one of those great approaches, though, is like taste. He has really good taste, even though he's kind of showing us just about everything he can do. He does it in such a classy, tasteful way. It just sounds great. He's a really great player and should be much better known than he is.
Yeah.
This is a straightforward jazz album for the most part. It's good to hear him in this format again. I think the Stevie Wonder album was the last time, We Wonder.
Right,
was the last time we heard him like doing kind of a jazz record, except that was all with Stevie Wonder songs. His amazing technique and expertise in all forms of playing, from high notes to bends, and even the plunger mute too, are on display throughout, perhaps more so here than on previous albums. That part of the album is thrilling. But I have to say, I'm really not a fan of the new agey echo effect that Bosso occasionally had on his trumpet. It was fine on the first track because it set a spacey atmosphere, but it's back on melody for F, and I would have preferred to hear him rely on his amazing technique. I mean, he can do that. You hear a bit of it on bassist Jacopo Ferrazza's bowed solo on Senza Tempo, too. Julian Oliver Mazzariello provides some stellar piano solos on the earlier tracks, particularly on Passeggiando, where he seems to squeeze a lot of ideas into his solo, not just melodic and harmonic, but rhythmic ones as well. I also liked him on Angular Flight, and I also liked bassist Jacopo Ferrazza's solo on Passeggiando. That was probably the standout track for me, in fact. It's an album with some great playing on it, particularly by Bosso, but I just wish he'd get over that attraction to electronic effects on his instrument.
Yeah, I'm always interested to hear what he's going to do next. He guests on a lot more albums these days. I see his name pop up on other things, but it was nice to have a whole new recording of fresh music by this quartet.
Yeah, despite the electronic effects, I still want this album.
Another one for the collection.
It's so great. There's such great playing on it, man.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for episode 264, and we've got a program lined up for next week. So what do you have set for the classical side, Mike?
Next week is July 4th.
Oh, wow.
It's American Independence Day. We celebrate our 250th birthday, even though Russ and I aren't there in the flesh. We're there in spirit. So in classical music, I've got, starting out, a French album. Okay, they were our allies, right, during the Revolution, and still are. This is Meuret, Saint-Colombe, and Forqueray. Pièce en Solitude, by the viola da gambist Caroline Nicolas. She's very young, Canadian too, from Winnipeg, and that's on the Avis label, so we'll be hearing some viola da gamba music. You might want to revisit Tout le matin du monde, the movie from the 1980s, to warm up for that. We have another French composer, Louise Farenc, her flute trios. I thought this would be interesting, by Trio La Flamme, and this is on the Evidence Classics label, which we, 2 weeks in a row. How about that?
Yeah.
All right, so we hear two of her flute trios. And then our contemporary composer is an American composer. I actually had him and two British composers under consideration. I was like, we have to go American for the 4th of July. So Dylan Mattingly from Oakland, California. His album, The Wild Heart, recently released on Nonesuch. And we've already heard from him. I sent him a message today because I needed the booklet for this release, and he sent it in hours. It was pretty amazing, so I'll look through that and see what this is all about.
All right, over on the jazz side, we're going to start out with Austrian bassist Vincent Rhein and an album called Variants. That's on the Austro-Meccana label. Then we're going to check out Canadian pianist and composer Zen Zadravec with New Paradigm. And finally, we'll come back to the U.S. with another really interesting trumpeter who has a sound all of his own. That's Brad Good with his quintet with Ernie Watts. It's called Live Your Dreams live at North Street Cabaret, and that's on Origin Records. And whenever we hear him, he has some sounds that knock us out. So looking forward to that recording as well. All of these recordings, classical and jazz, will be together on our Deezer playlist. And I'll put that up a few hours after this episode is published, and we'll have a link to it from our Facebook page as well. As always, we want to say thanks to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo. Any final thoughts for this one, Mike?
Well, we said we had to get out there and make connections, but after this episode, I'm staying in and listening to more music. Maybe I'll invite someone to listen with me, but I don't know if they'll come.
We're in the middle of the rainy season here. We've got typhoons passing one after the other, sometimes really at the same time. Yeah. It's not fun to be outside in this weather, so.
It certainly isn't.
It's a good time to stay in and do some listening. And that's what we'll be doing in the next week. And if you check out our playlist, you can do it along with us and catch up with us again next week for episode 265. So until then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.